All right, guys. So we're here with Arnold Schwarzenegger. We're going to be doing an Olympia recap and an Arnold Sports Festival 2023 preview. Arnold, I just want to thank you for doing this. This is a great honor for me. I actually wanted to say that I started my channel because of your show. I started attending the Arnold Classic when I was maybe 14 years old, and that was one of the very first videos that I ever posted to my channel. So that was my start in bodybuilding, was going to your show with my dad and my uncle, and that is the reason why I'm here sitting with you today. So thank you for doing this.
It's my pleasure, and we have been having the greatest time promoting the Arnold Classic for decades, and we started, as a matter of fact, way back in 1976 in Columbus, Ohio, with Jim Lorimer, the first Mr. Olympia competition that we organized, and that was such a success that the IFBB asked us then to do the Mr. Olympia and Mr. Universe in 1977. And then after that, we did them both together. So it was really a very, very successful run. And I just love being part of it, not only as a competitor of the Mr. Olympia competition and Mr. Universe, but also then as a promoter. And it has continued on. I mean, it's like, it's unbelievable when you look at now the lineup of how fantastic those guys are and everything like that. So it's been a nice history that Joe Weider created way back in the 60s.
Yeah. So speaking of the Olympia, we had the Olympia last night, and with Big Ramy winning the last two Olympias, it seemed as if the judges have been favoring size in recent years. But last night we saw two comparatively smaller bodybuilders finishing in the top two spots. How do you feel about what seemed to be a stronger emphasis on conditioning and proportion in this weekend's judging?
Well, I don't know if the judges are changing their minds or if they're looking for a different standard. I have not talked to them, nor do I know who were the judges. But I can tell you that Big Ramy, he could have won again. I mean, all he had to do is just stay the same the way he was and, decrease his waist by 1 inch and increase his calves by 1 inch. That's all he had to do all year long. And he would have won again. But what a lot of these guys do is they think bigger is better. And bigger is not better. I mean, better is when you go and create more symmetry, when you create more definition, more muscle separation, and that you have a body where one body part doesn't steal something from the other body part. Like, for instance, to give you an example, when I saw Ramy, his double bicep from the front and the back, it's awesome. But the deltoids now and the upper pectoral muscles that go kind of into the, deltoid, that when he lifts up, now is so enormous that it actually made his enormous biceps, and his big arms, it made it disappear. All of a sudden, his arms looked smaller than they were. Why? Because his deltoids were overshadowing kind of his bicep and his arms. So these are the kind of things that is extremely important to create a body and to chisel away on that body and to mold the body to perfection, not to bigger. Because bigger is not, I mean, he was already so huge. So therefore, why get bigger? I mean, you can only hurt yourself. And it reminds me a little bit on a good old days, because I remember that Sergio Oliva, as you know, beat me in 1969. And he beat me because he was a little bit bigger than I was, and he was more ripped than I was. So what does he do? The following year, he gains 10 pounds. Well, it's very difficult to gain 10 pounds of muscle quality and of perfection. So he gained 10 pounds. And so we met at the Mr. World competition in Columbus, Ohio, that Jim Lorimer organized. And I just came back from the Mr. Universe contest literally a night before in London, where I had pre-judging, where I had judging and pose-offs and this and that and all that stuff. So I was fine-tuned. I lost my 5 extra pounds and I was fine-tuned. And Sergio came in with the 10 pounds heavier, and I beat him. And so this was a perfect example that bigger is not better. And so some people make that mistake. It's not a mistake that is not reversible. So the Rami can come back, next year and just say, okay, I'm going to lose 10, 15 pounds or 20, and I'm going to chisel down my waist size. I get my calves up, and I'm going to perfect my posing, and I'm going to get rid of kind of the few flaws that I have. So it's totally reversible because he was fantastic last year. But I just think that the winners that they picked this year, I couldn't even criticize one placing, because as we all know, it's a matter of opinion anyway, right? So, I mean, of course, one can say, well, Derek maybe was better than Hardy, and Nick was better than Brian, all of this kind of things. That always goes on. But the bottom line is, when I look at the top 5 of the Olympia, I thought that the judges did really a great job. I really think so.
So what did you think about Nick Walker, who is your former Arnold Classic champion, placing 3rd in this year's Olympia ahead of Big Ramy?
Well, I went up to Nick Walker, and I went to him after he won the Arnold Classic, and I said to him, you are fantastic. I mean, you're spectacular. You have everything going for yourself to move up into the Mr. Olympia arena and to really place high and eventually win it. And he said, thanks very much. I really appreciate that and all that stuff. And I was right, because, I mean, he's really fantastic. And I just think that the more he practices his posing, the better it is for him, because he has such an extraordinary body that he cannot really pile on more weight with his height and his frame. So now he has to really go for perfection and for performance. And I think that's where really he can get the extra points, and he could win the Mr. Olympia. I mean, if he would have a posing routine that is just so spectacular that makes just the people jump out of their chairs and scream, even with his size and his height of body height, I think he could win. So I think that he's really onto something really good. I think he did a great job. When I look at his, I took some screenshots yesterday of your coverage and all that stuff. And when I look at his body, I mean, just the back, the front, the bicep. He's one of those very few people that have like a really high bicep, and the delta doesn't detract from the bicep, and the bicep doesn't take anything away from the tricep. So everything is kind of really well balanced, I thought. And his routine was good. As a matter of fact, I would say in general, the posing has improved amongst the bodybuilders, which really pleases me. I think that we are now at around an average of around a 7. I think we can go to a 10. So there's a lot of room still in posing for drama. And I think that, I think the judges are seeing that now more and more. And I think the bodybuilders, the competitors themselves, to see that more, that there's a huge potential there to improve.
Well, speaking of posing, we've got this brand new Classic Physique division. Did you watch Classic Physique and Open, and which were you more impressed by?
Well, I think that, look, I think it is crazy in a way to have a Classic Physique category, simply because that should be the Mr. Olympia. Because what is it that we're celebrating? That in the classic days, we looked for proportion, and now we don't give a shit about it anymore? I mean, is that what we're saying? So I think it's odd. They had to literally create a Classic Physique competition to give to the person that has the best quality body, the most well-balanced body, also a trophy. Yeah. Because you couldn't compete in that the monsters were competing. Well, that's actually wrong, because I think, like I said, big is not always better. So I think that it's going now in the right direction. And so I think that Chris Bumstead is fantastic. He's won, I think it's not the 4th time that he has won it, right?
Yep, the 4th time.
The 4th time. So, I mean, he's really extraordinary. And I tell you, I always feel like, the insiders have their own favorites, and then there's the viewers, the spectators, the fans. And he's the most popular, if you think about that. I think that he's the most popular bodybuilder right now.
Yeah.
And so and what does that say? That says that everyone out there says, that's the kind of a body I want. It's just like in the old days when Steve Reeves walked on the beach. People just stopped cold. And they said, oh my God, would I love to have a body like that? Right? And so that is really what it is about. So people really say, I want to look like Chris or like Raymond or us. I mean, those were really, I mean, they were really fantastic competitors. They have a great physique. And again, everyone has the room to improve and all that stuff. I mean, that is what people want to see. And that's what they want to see in the Olympia.
Would you like to see Chris compete at the Arnold Classic next year? Because you guys actually offered more prize money at this past Arnold Classic than the previous Mr. Olympia did for Classic Physique. So I don't see why Chris wouldn't do the Arnold Classic.
I think he could win. You know, there's no two ways about that. And I told that to Chris. I mean, Chris, as you know, is a big fan of the Arnold Classic. He comes there and you know, he's very kind to all the fans, does autographs and all this stuff. But I mean, it's like I hope that he competes because I think there's a great chance of winning that. And I'm not the judge. I'm just a promoter. You know, the IFBB sets up the judges, but I think that everyone really likes his body and his performance and everything like this, and they want him to do well.
So in the open class, did you get a chance to see this new guy, Andrew Jacked? And what do you think of his physique? He's a little bit more aesthetic. He's a taller guy, 6'1". What do you think of him placing as highly as he did, being a more different physique in that lineup?
Who are you talking about now?
Andrew Jacked. He won the Arnold Classic UK.
Oh, yeah, sure. I think it's fantastic. I think that it was good that he placed well. I still think that he can do much better in his posing. And, you know, he should continue. And I hope that for him, it is also, the message is improve through your posing, improve through your symmetry, improve your muscle separations and definition and stuff like that, and not just through your size. That is the important thing there.
Now, do you see Classic Physique and Men's Open Bodybuilding as being in competition with one another, or can they both continue to grow in popularity as two uniquely different divisions?
I think that, you know, look, I feel the more competitions there are, the better it is. So I don't think there's a competition per se. I think that, you know, the Olympia, if it is the Classic Physique, if it's the Arnold Classic, if it's the Arnold Classic, you know, in England, or the Arnold Classic in South America or Australia or South America or South Africa and all this. I mean, all of those competitions are great. Or the Olympia travels around with different competitions all over the world. All of this is good because it gives the athletes an opportunity, the amateurs, to compete and to work their way up to the top, and to have always a reason to work out for and to train for and to have something to shoot for. And then the professional can make some extra money. Because remember that in my days, there was no money. I mean, imagine I win the Mr. Olympia competition. I remember in 1974, whatever it was, and we got like $750.
Wow.
I mean, $750. But again, we didn't do it for the money. You know, Franco and I, we were working on construction at that time, and we were doing bricklaying jobs and rebuilding Los Angeles after the earthquake and all that stuff. And so we made our money that way. And then I started my mail order business, and I made money that way also. So we definitely didn't count on cash prizes. That's why I started the competition to promote competitions in the first place, because I always wanted to kind of like increase the cash prizes. So we were the first ones, I remember, in 1976 to offer $5,000 in cash prizes. Then we went to $10,000, then to $25,000, to 50. And this is how we went up year after year. We went up and doubled it and all this stuff until the IFBB came along, Ben Weider, and said, you have to have an agreement for you to be sanctioned by the IFBB as an official IFBB competition. And I said, what's the agreement? He said to me, he says, you cannot offer more money than we're offering for the Olympia. So we were always held back. The Arnold Classic was always held back to offer more cash prizes because we made an agreement that we would not go higher than the Mr. Olympia. And the only way we could go higher is, let's say, if they offer, let's say, $1 million in cash prizes, and we offer $999,000 in cash prizes, and then offer a Hummer or a BMW electric car or something like that. We throw in something extra that is not really counted as a cash prize, right? So that's the only way we could get around something like that.
Right. So being a 7-time Mr. Olympia winner yourself, who do you consider to be the greatest bodybuilder of all time? Do you think it's yourself? And do you think if it is you, can anybody ever take that title away from you?
Well, that's a decision that has to be made by the fans. That I'm not here to say I'm the greatest and all that stuff. I let other people say that. They think I'm the greatest of all time. Great. I feel honored with that, but I just know myself that there were terrific bodybuilders. I still think that Steve Reeves was the greatest of all time because of the kind of the beauty he had on the body and all that stuff. So I think everyone will have a different opinion on that. I think that, for instance, Lee Haney, when he came up in the 80s and he started winning one Mr. Olympia after the next, I mean, he was a great story. I mean, he was a fantastic physique. He's a great, great man and a very giving man. Does a lot of charity work and all that stuff. So I thought he was a great representative of the sport. And he had an enormous physique, defined and this V-shaped body, wide shoulders, small waist and all this, great posing. So I was in awe with his physique and with his performance. And then came along Ronnie Coleman, that just was another one of those guys with a huge shoulders, really wide, great proportions, and a great Mr. Olympia and stuff like that. So, I'm not about to say that, I was better than those guys. No, I think that those guys are just fantastic. And I think that, maybe people shouldn't even talk about who was better than this and that. And also, I think it's bogus when people say, they use a lot of times photographs of me from the 70s and then compare it to photographs of the modern bodybuilders and all that stuff. And first of all, you can never compare anything like that because it depends what's the lighting conditions of the photographs and all of that stuff. And also, it's kind of like comparing a running performance from the 30s or 40s versus a running performance today, where everything, the equipment is different, the medication is different, the nutrition is different, the food intake is different, the training methods are different, and all that kind of stuff. So I think that it makes it fun and entertaining to do all of those kind of things. I totally understand that, but I never really thought that you can go and do that. Like people say, what would it have been like with Ali and Dempsey boxing, or what would it have been this, kind of this made up kind of matches. But I guess it's entertaining. It's fine, But I just think there was just so many great bodybuilders. I just enjoy and celebrate that, where our sport came from. And I think that the key thing is that we continue promoting it and make it very entertaining for people, so it's not kind of like a deadbeat, because some of those bodybuilding shows get to be too slow and it drags it down and too long and all that stuff. And it's just kind of like, it's not fun then anymore. And so you have to find that happy medium of being very entertaining as a show, having full of energy in there, and really moving it along really fast and have the guys perform better. I think that's where the action is.
So let's switch gears a little bit, talk about your contest, the Arnold Classic. We're coming up on another year of the Arnold Sports Festival. And what are you most looking forward to for the 2023 show?
Well, first of all, let me just say that there's some people that said that the amateur competition is not going to be part of it anymore. The amateur competition is part of it. I think maybe there's someone within our organization felt that we don't need it, but I straightened that out right away, because to me, I do need it. simply because I want to promote amateur bodybuilding.
That wouldn't be Brian Powers that made that mistake, would it?
We have a whole team. I don't point the finger at anybody, but I mean, I just can tell you that it was a miscommunication, and so I made sure that it's back in, and that everyone knows that amateur is back. If it's for women, for men, it never left, and it never will leave. But so that's what I want to say. And the other one is just that we are very excited that we have been now going in the direction that where we were in 2019 when we had the last time kind of like the packed 250,000 people sports and fitness festival in Columbus. Correct me if I'm wrong. It was 2019, right, guys?
I believe so.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was.
Yeah. Okay. Before COVID came in, because we got killed in 2020, where we had like the biggest sales of all times, and the most sponsors, and the most displays, and the biggest convention, only to be told the night before we opened the doors that we cannot have the Sports and Fitness Festival in Columbus, that the only thing we can have is the actual bodybuilding competition with no more than 5,000 spectators. So, I mean, that really was devastating to all of us, and not that it was anyone's fault. It's just one of those circumstances. COVID started hitting, people started getting scared. Politicians started, really banning all of the competitions and all public events and all that stuff. So it was just, we just really suffered from that. But now we are working our way back, and it looks like this year we are really back, because we are very excited about the ticket sales. They've picked up, and they're really going faster than they've ever gone before. The sponsors are really enthusiastic again to jump in there, the sponsoring the Arnold Classic. So there will be a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of displays. It'll be a big convention again with a lot of different sports. We are very excited about the first week in March, when the competition is going to be happening in Columbus.
So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Jim Lorimer. We got the unfortunate news recently that he passed away. And for those that don't know about his amazing legacy in the sport, what would you want fans to know most about Jim?
I think that people should know and read up on his history, because he was an extraordinary man. Not only a great family man, and a great vice president for Nationwide Insurance, and a great FBI agent, and a great mayor of Worthington, and a great judge of Worthington, a great law professor, and a great partner and organizer of our Arnold Classic, and Mr. Olympia and Mr. Universe, and also the organizer of the Mr. World competition and the World Championships in weightlifting in 1970. So he was just an extraordinary man. He became my partner in 1970. We shook hands, and I said to him, if I retire, I will want you to be my partner. And we organized here in Columbus the Mr. Olympia and Mr. Universe competition. And eventually that turned into the Arnold Classic and so on. So he was my partner from 1970 when we shook hands, with no contract, no nothing. So we are talking about, for over 50 years, we had this partnership, and we started, for 45 years, we were organizing competitions and all that. And as sad story is about life, eventually get older. And, he was still in his 90s when he was fully active, and, was my partner and organized the Arnold Classic and all that stuff. But then he passed away with the age of 96. And I lost a dear, dear friend and a great partner. And Jim Lorimer was also to me kind of like, he hated when I said that, kind of like a father figure, because he always felt like it's more like a brother figure, because he felt always young. And but the fact of the matter was, he was like a father figure, and he was like a mentor, and he was just so good in organizing, and he was so smart, and he was so well read, and he was so giving. I mean, money. It was one of those guys that money meant nothing to him. It was all about giving back to the community and giving back to the sport. And so I think that was just extraordinary. And so people really if they want to go and admire somebody, he's the one to be admired. I mean, that guy is just unbeatable. And so he was, I think that he's, his name will be around for a long time because of the great work that he did. And remember, before bodybuilding and weightlifting, he was promoting the women's athletics in Ohio because he was so pissed off about the fact that the Russians who beat the American women in the Olympics and in the World Games and in the international championships and all this. So he realized that the women have not been supported enough in America. So he on his own went out and started promoting women track and field in Ohio and in America. Some matter of fact, he trained the pre-Olympic trials he ran, way back in '68. And I mean, he just was just so supportive of women and of Black women then. I mean, when you heard that in his funeral, the eulogies of those Black women that he supported way back in the '60s for the Olympics and all this stuff, when you heard what they said about him, was just extraordinary. So he was just way ahead of everybody else when you talk about equality and about women's rights, and about the equal rights, and not to look at a certain race differently and all this fame. Everyone was the same. That was so great about it.
So that brings me to my next question. The Arnold Sports Festival is so much more than just bodybuilding. You've got all these different sports. What is your favorite sport to watch at the Arnold that's not related to bodybuilding?
Well, I think bodybuilding obviously is number one, as you said. And I think the power sports. I love the weightlifting, the Olympic lifting, because I myself was an Olympic lifter. I was in a weightlifting club in Austria, and we were competing at least 10, 20 competitions a year, traveling around from city to city, competing against other clubs. And it was a lot of fun. And then I was also in powerlifting. And I was competing in powerlifting, and it was a great, great experience. And so those are the sports I wanted originally to promote when we expanded the Arnold Classic. We wanted to just have other sports like weightlifting. And my dream is to have the American Championships or Pan American Championships or World Championships in weightlifting at the Arnold Classic, and to have the same thing also in powerlifting. And then you have the world's strongest man competition, and to have all of this strong, kind of all the sports that deal with strength, be at the Arnold Classic. So that's my ultimate goal. And we have had great competitions, but there's also some other competitions that are real fun. Like for instance, gymnastics and archery and running, and the pump and run competition that we have there, rope climbing, and there's just so many different fencing. I mean, it goes on in boxing, martial arts, and all this. So the idea of it is not to go and say, okay, I'm going to favor one sport over the other, but to basically say to the community and to the world, hey, let's celebrate all sports. So that's what the Arnold Sports Festival is all about, to celebrate all sports and to just say to people, everyone should do something. And that's what the competition is all about, is to inspire millions of people to go out and to exercise, to eat well, and so on. And it doesn't matter what sport you do, just do something. That is the idea. And the other thing that we're promoting at the same time is that no matter what kind of financial situation that you're in, or health situation that you're in, everyone has a right to be fit. That's the idea. So let's all work together so that people that are in Special Olympics can exercise. People that that are physically handicapped in one way or the other can find a gym that they can join and work out there and do the therapy and the workout and resistance training and all this stuff. Or no matter what your situation is, you can go running and participate in running or playing tennis and all this stuff. So that's the idea, is let's open it up, not just for a few privileged, but for everybody. Doesn't matter what situation you're in financially, that you can go and join that. And that's why I think it's important also for us to show always the people exercises they can do at home, that they can do on the road, they can do while they're traveling and all that stuff, so they don't have to just spend money to stay fit.
Okay, so that brings me to the final question. So we've got millions of young fans who will watch some or all of this interview. And rather than ask you what advice you would give them, I would rather ask you if you could speak to your younger self, 19-year-old Arnold, the kid from Austria, what would you tell him or what advice would you give your younger self?
Well, I feel like I didn't need any additional advice because I got great advice from the people around me. I had a good trainer that said to me, he says, Arnold, leave, go somewhere like Germany and or America because you have such a great potential. I have great hopes in you, and I know you're going to go all the way and you're going to become world champion and stuff like that. And I was able to listen to the yes sayers and to the people that supported me in the military that said, yeah, you don't have to stay here in the military and serve your whole 3-year term. Go out, go on and just, do your thing because you're going to become a world champion. And there's a lot of people that supported me all the way like that and that showed me and guided me along the way. And so I don't think I needed additional advice. And I would just tell myself, stay on track and don't listen to the naysayers. Because one of the things that I recognized very early on was that as soon as you pick a very crazy goal, what's crazy for some people, but very normal for you, like for me, it was to be a world champion in bodybuilding, be Mr. Universe like Reg Park and Steve Reeves. And people say, you're sick in the head. You should go to a shrink. I mean, this is never going to happen. What do you think? They're going to wait for you in order to. And then when they say they want to come to America, they also say this will never happen. What do you think? They're waiting in America for someone like you from Tar in Austria? Forget it. So it was always no, and this can't happen. It's impossible and all this stuff. And so if I just give myself one advice, I would just say, okay, keep it up, Arnold. Don't listen to the naysayers. Just keep grinding it out and just keep working and chasing your dream. That is the most important thing. And so I think that's what I would say. Now, as then life goes on, there's a lot of advice I would give myself because it's always good to be smart in hindsight, right? So I mean, I made mistakes along the way. If it's in bodybuilding, I made mistakes. If it was in lifting and movies, personal life, and all of that stuff. So I would have liked to have someone that just don't do this, don't do that. But I mean, nevertheless, the bottom line is, when I put it all on a scale, I'm very happy with the decisions that I've made.
Well, Arnold, I think that about covers everything I wanted to talk about today. Again, I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate you doing this. This is such an honor to me. You have no idea how cool this is. And I will see you at the Arnold Classic in March.
Absolutely. And I tell you why I did this. I did this because you deserve it. I mean, you did such a great job with your coverage. And I felt like I want to contribute to your success. And I'm so excited that you're doing this broadcast and that millions of people can listen to that. These are the things that we did not have in my days when I was competing. We didn't have anyone broadcasting. Yeah, they were broadcasting about boxing and about golf and about tennis and about the football and all the American sports, but not about bodybuilding. There was no one there broadcasting. It took a half a year until the world found out who was Mr. Olympia, because that's when the magazines were published internationally. It took that long, So I think you're doing a great job. You're very articulate. You're very well versed. You know the sport inside and outside. So I loved listening to you, and I wanted to contribute here and say hi to all the listeners.
Well, thank you so much. That is so cool for me to hear you say that. You have no idea. You just made my day. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Okay.
Bye-bye. Happy holidays. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.